Hey there. Tonight let's drift back. Way back to 793 AD, to the cold shores of Norway. You're about to discover why being a Viking raider wasn't the glorious adventure the sagas make it seem. Picture yourself standing on a rocky beach, salt spray stinging your face, watching longships disappear into fog. You're 16 winters old, and tomorrow you'll board one of those ships for the first time. Your name is Bjorn, and you have no idea that 7 out of 10 raiders on your ship won't survive the next 5 years. The romanticized Viking warrior you've seen in stories, that's not you. You're a farmer's son who can barely swing an axe properly, about to learn that Viking raids were less about glory and more about desperate survival in a harsh world where violence was currency and death was always one storm away. So, dim the lights, settle into your warm bed, so different from the wet planks where Bjorn will sleep, and let me tell you the story they never taught you in school. The story of broken teeth from hardtack bread, of frostbitten fingers gripping oar handles, of watching friends die from infected wounds because nobody understood basic medicine. This is the real Viking experience, told through young Bjorn's eyes, as he discovers that being a raider meant accepting misery as your closest companion. You wake before dawn in your family's longhouse, the smoke from the central fire making your eyes water as it always does. Your father, Ulf, is already awake, sharpening the old axe he's lending you for the raid. The weapon is notched and worn, passed down from his father, who died coughing blood after a raid went wrong 15 winters ago. Your mother hasn't spoken to you in 3 days. She knows what happens to young men who sail west. The statistics are brutal. Most first-time raiders either die or return too injured to work the farm properly. Your stomach churns, not from hunger, but from fear you can't show. Vikings don't admit fear. You pull on your only tunic that isn't completely threadbare, knowing it needs to last you months at sea. The leather shoes your mother made are already coming apart at the seams, but they're all you have. Your younger brother watches from his sleeping bench, his eyes reflecting the firelight. He thinks you're lucky to go raiding. He doesn't understand that you're doing this because the farm can't support everyone through another winter. The morning porridge tastes like ash in your mouth. Your mother finally speaks, telling you to keep your feet dry and your head down during fights. She knows you've never killed anyone. The heaviest thing you've ever lifted is a sack of grain. Now you're expected to row for 12 hours straight and then fight trained warriors for scraps of silver. This is your reality. The walk to the fjord takes 3 hours through freezing mud. Your pack weighs 40 pounds. A sleeping sack made of mangy sheepskin, a wooden bowl, some dried fish that's already growing mold, and a small knife for eating. No armor. Armor is for successful raiders who survived long enough to steal it. You're wearing the same wool trousers and tunic you'll wear for the next 3 months until they rot off your body or you die wearing them. At the shore, you see the longship for the first time up close. It's smaller than you imagined, barely 60 feet long, and it'll hold 35 men. That's less than 2 feet of width per man. The smell hits you immediately. Tar, old sweat, and something else you'll later recognize as the permanent stench of fear vomit that never quite washes out of the planks. The ship's captain, Ragnar Irontooth, named for the metal replacement after losing his real teeth to scurvy, looks you over with disgust. You're obviously new meat, what they call wave food, boys likely to go overboard in the first storm. Other raiders are already aboard, checking ropes and oars. Most are missing fingers, ears or eyes. One man's face is a mass of burned scars from a church that fought back with boiling oil. These aren't heroes. They're desperate men who've traded their humanity for the slim chance of enough plunder to survive winter. Your first lesson comes immediately. Rowing. You thought you were strong from farm work, but after just 1 hour, your hands are bleeding through the blisters. The oar weighs 20 pounds, and you'll pull it approximately 15,000 times before you reach England. The man next to you, missing 3 fingers on his left hand, tells you to piss on your palms. The salt helps toughen them. This is medical science in 793 AD. The sea is nothing like the calm fjord. Even in mild weather, the ship lurches and rolls. Within 2 hours, you're vomiting over the side while still trying to row. The experienced raiders laugh, but not kindly. They're laughing because they remember their own first day, and because watching others suffer is one of the few entertainments available. You'll be rowing in shifts of 6 hours on, 6 hours off for the next 5 days. Sleep happens on the same bench where you row, curled against whoever's next to you for warmth. By sunset, your back muscles are screaming. You've torn something in your shoulder but can't stop rowing or you'll be thrown overboard. The crew doesn't carry dead weight. The dried fish you brought is already making you sick. It was probably bad before you left shore. You'll eat it anyway because the alternative is starving. Welcome to Viking luxury travel. Cold. Your sleeping sack is soaked with spray and provides no warmth. You're pressed between 2 other men who smell like rotting teeth and infected wounds. One is coughing constantly, a wet chunking sound that means he probably won't survive the voyage. Disease spreads fast when 35 men share a space smaller than a modern garage. You can't sleep. The ship never stops moving, rising and falling with swells that make your stomach heave even when empty. Water constantly splashes over the sides, ensuring you're never dry. Your feet are already showing signs of what sailors call rot foot, the skin turning white and peeling away. In 2 weeks, you'll be able to pull your toenails off without feeling it. Around midnight, someone starts screaming. It's the young man 3 benches ahead. His infected tooth has finally driven him mad with pain. The captain's solution is simple. 2 men hold him down while a third yanks the tooth out with iron pliers. The screaming stops, replaced by sobbing. There's no shame in crying here. Everyone cries eventually. The North Sea doesn't care about your warrior reputation. By morning, the man with the pulled tooth is dead from blood loss. They throw his body overboard without ceremony. 1 less mouth to feed. Day 3 brings your first real storm. The waves are 15 feet high, and the longship climbs them like a sick whale. Everything not tied down flies across the deck. Men are praying to Thor, Odin, anyone who might listen. You're certain you're going to die. The sail has to come down or it'll tear the mast out, so you're climbing wet rigging in hurricane winds, fingers so numb you can barely feel the rope. Below, men bail water frantically with buckets and helmets. If the ship takes on too much water, it simply disappears beneath the waves. No rescue ships, no floating debris to cling to. Just cold death in minutes. You watch 1 man get swept overboard, there for a moment, then gone. No one even tries to save him. In these waters, falling overboard is a death sentence. The crew doesn't even know his name to tell his family. The storm lasts 14 hours. By the end, 3 men are dead. 2 from exposure and 1 from a broken neck when a wave threw him into the mast. You haven't eaten in 2 days because everything is soaked. Your lips are cracked and bleeding from the salt. This is only the beginning of your journey. You still have to fight when you reach land, assuming you survive that long. The morning after, the storm reveals the true damage. The ship's rudder is cracked and needs constant adjustment to keep course. Food supplies are ruined. Seawater has gotten into the dried fish and hard bread, accelerating rot. What isn't spoiled is rationed to one small handful per man per day. Your body is eating itself to stay warm. In the sagas, Vikings are mighty warriors. In reality, by the time you reach a raid target, you're weakened, sick, and desperate. Your benchmate, Eric, shows you his foot. 2 toes are black with frostbite. He'll lose them within days, assuming infection doesn't kill him first. He's 17, on his 3rd raid. He tells you most men don't survive past 5 raids, either killed in combat, drowned at sea, or dead from disease. The successful Vikings you hear about are statistical anomalies, survivors of a meat grinder that consumes young men. Navigation is guesswork and prayer. The navigator uses a sunstone when the sun appears, which isn't often. Mostly, he's following birds and trusting currents. If he's wrong, you'll miss England entirely and die in the open Atlantic. There's already talk of turning back, but Ragnar Irontooth knows returning empty-handed means families starve. The desperation that drove you to sea keeps you rowing toward likely death. Land is spotted on day 6, the English coast. But instead of relief, you feel dread tightening your chest. Now comes the part where you might get an axe in your skull. The older raiders are checking weapons, but half the swords are rusted, the axes are dull, and several men are too sick to fight. This isn't a coordinated military force. It's a desperate mob hoping to overwhelm some monks before local warriors arrive. Ragnar gathers everyone for the battle plan, which amounts to hit them hard, grab what you can, get back to the ship before we're outnumbered. There's no strategy beyond violence and speed. You're targeting a monastery because monks don't usually fight back much. Usually. Sometimes they have guards. Sometimes the local lord arrives with trained soldiers. Sometimes the monks themselves have decided they're tired of being victims. Your armor consists of your wool tunic and a leather cap you traded your eating knife for. The man who sold it to you failed to mention the leather was rotten and splits at the first impact. Most of the crew has similar protection. Scraps of leather, perhaps a handful with actual mail shirts taken from previous raids. You're about to charge into combat essentially naked, with a borrowed axe you can barely swing properly. The landing is chaos. The ship runs aground on a pebble beach, and everyone scrambles over the sides. Your legs, weakened from days of rowing and no food, collapse under you. You face-plant in the surf, while others trample past. By the time you're on your feet, the fastest raiders are already hundreds of yards ahead, racing toward the monastery. You're at the back with the sick and weak, the most likely to die if there's resistance. The run up the hill to the monastery is only a quarter mile, but it feels like leagues. Your lungs burn, your empty stomach cramps, and the axe feels like it weighs 50 pounds. Ahead, you hear screaming, but not the triumphant war cries of Vikings. It's pain and surprise. The monks were ready. As you crest the hill, you see why. Local militia has arrived. What should have been 35 Vikings against a handful of monks is now 35 weakened raiders against 20 fresh soldiers. Your first real combat lasts exactly 4 seconds. A Saxon warrior, probably a farmer like you were a week ago, swings a club at your head. You duck purely by instinct, trip over a dead Viking, and accidentally plant your axe in the Saxon's knee as you fall. He screams and drops. You're not a warrior. You're a lucky fool who just crippled another desperate man trying to protect his home. The raid becomes a desperate scramble for survival. Half the Vikings are already down, dead or wounded. You're stepping over bodies, both Viking and Saxon, trying to reach the monastery's storeroom. The monks have barricaded themselves in the church, and 3 Vikings are trying to break down the door while arrows rain from the windows. One arrow catches a raider in the throat right next to you. He drops, gurgling. reaching for help that won't come. Inside the monastery's kitchen, you find what you came for. Food. Not gold or silver, but bread, preserved meat, and dried beans. You stuff everything you can into a sack while your hands shake uncontrollably. This isn't glorious plunder. It's stealing food from monks to avoid starving. Through the window, you see more Saxon reinforcements arriving. The raid is over. Now it's about getting back to the ship alive. The retreat is worse than the attack. You're running downhill with 20 pounds of stolen food, Saxons pursuing, your own wounded screaming for help that no one can give. One young Viking, maybe 14, is lying in the path with his intestines spilling out. He begs you to help him. You keep running. There's nothing you can do, and stopping means dying beside him. This is the reality of Viking brotherhood. Survival trumps everything. Only 19 raiders make it back to the ship. Almost half the crew is dead or abandoned. You're pushing the longship off the beach while arrows thud into the hull. 2 men are trying to row while bleeding heavily. One dies before the ship clears the surf, slumping over his oar. No one has energy to throw him overboard yet, so he stays there, eyes open, while you row past him. The plunder is pathetic. A few sacks of food, some copper candlesticks, and a handful of coins. Divided among survivors, it's worth perhaps 2 months of food per man. For this, 16 men died. Ragnar Irontooth is gut-wounded and won't survive the journey home. Without him, the crew descends into arguments about whether to attempt another raid or return home with almost nothing. You're in shock, sitting at your oar, covered in blood that isn't yours, rowing mechanically while your mind replays the Saxon farmer's scream when your axe hit his knee. The sagas don't mention how it feels to cripple someone who was just defending their home. They don't describe the guilt that sits in your stomach, heavier than hunger. You're not a warrior. You're a farm boy who just participated in a failed robbery that killed half your shipmates. The journey home begins with an immediate crisis. Without enough men to properly crew the ship, everyone must row longer shifts. Wounded men row until they pass out. The Saxon arrow wounds are already showing infection, red streaks spreading from puncture sites, the smell of rot beginning. There's no medicine except seawater to wash wounds, which just adds agony to inevitable death. Eric's frostbitten toes have turned into full gangrene. The smell makes everyone gag. Using the same knife you eat with, you help hold him down while someone saws off his foot at the ankle. There's no alcohol for pain relief. It was all drunk in the first 2 days. Eric passes out from pain, wakes up screaming, passes out again. The cut is ragged, bleeds too much. He'll be dead by morning, and everyone knows it. Food from the raid must be rationed even more strictly now. Your share is 2 handfuls of stolen bread per day and whatever rainwater you can catch in your bowl. The preserved meat is saved for whoever is rowing. If you're too weak to row, you don't eat. 3 wounded men who can't row anymore are essentially sentenced to death by starvation. They sit at the front of the ship, watching everyone else eat, waiting to die. By the 4th day of the return journey, the ship is a floating coffin. 7 more men have died. Infection, exposure, starvation. Their bodies are thrown overboard at night, so no one has to see their faces in daylight. You've stopped learning names. What's the point when they'll be dead tomorrow? The social bonds that supposedly held Viking crews together have dissolved into pure survival instinct. You're hallucinating from exhaustion and hunger. The oar feels like it's melting in your hands. Sometimes you're not sure if you're rowing or dreaming of rowing. The man next to you hasn't moved in hours, but no one checks if he's alive or dead. If he's dead, he can stay at his oar until someone needs his food ration. This is how far you've fallen from human decency in just 2 weeks. The navigator is dead, killed by infection from a small cut that went septic. Navigation is now guesswork by whoever thinks they remember the way home. You might be rowing toward Norway or Iceland, or just deeper into the North Atlantic to die. The sun hasn't been visible for 3 days. Even if you had a sunstone, no one remembers how to use it properly. You're lost, dying, and running out of everything, including hope. A second storm hits when you have no strength left to fight it. This time, no one climbs the rigging to lower the sail. Everyone who could climb is dead or dying. The sail tears away in the wind, taking part of the mast with it. The ship is now essentially a large rowboat with 11 barely living men trying to navigate the North Atlantic. You're bailing water with your hands because someone threw the buckets overboard in delirium. During the storm, you make a decision that haunts you forever. The wounded man next to you, delirious with fever, won't stop trying to stand up. Each time he rises, he nearly capsizes the ship. The third time, as he staggers upright, you push him. Just a small shove, but enough. He goes over the side and disappears into the black water. No one sees. No one would care if they did. You've just murdered a shipmate to marginally improve your own survival chances. The Vikings in the sagas were heroes. You're a murderer. The storm passes, leaving 4 men dead and the ship barely floating. You're down to 9 survivors from the original 35. The successful raid that would save your family from starvation has become a catastrophe that will be forgotten by history. No one will write sagas about this failure. Your story will die with you in this cold sea. Starvation brings its own madness. You're eating leather now, cutting strips from your shoes and chewing them for hours to trick your stomach into thinking it's food. One man is eating the tar caulking from between the ship's planks. Another is gnawing on rope. The human body can survive 3 weeks without food, but you're also rowing, freezing, and fighting infection. You're dying faster than normal starvation. There's talk of drawing lots, the Viking way of deciding who gets eaten when crews resort to cannibalism. It's not uncommon. Every experienced raider knows someone who survived by eating shipmates. But you're too weak even for that level of organization. Instead, you wait for someone to die naturally, then eye their body with a hunger that should horrify you but doesn't. Humanity is a luxury you can't afford anymore. On day 6 of the return journey, you wake to find the man beside you has died in the night. Before reporting it, you search his belongings. He had been hiding a small piece of dried fish. You eat it immediately, not caring that it's covered in his death fluids. This is what you've become, a corpse robber stealing food from dead companions. The fish makes you violently ill within hours, but at least your stomach feels full while you vomit. Land appears on day 8, but it's not Norway. You've landed somewhere on the Scottish coast, hundreds of miles from home. The 9 survivors are too weak to raid anything. You can barely walk, let alone fight. The decision is made to beach the ship and try to trade it for food and passage home. A long ship, even damaged, is worth something. Your great Viking raid has been reduced to selling your only way home for bread. The Scottish fishing village you stumble into treats you with disgust and pity rather than fear. You're not mighty Vikings. You're starving, disease-ridden beggars. Children throw stones at you. Women cross themselves and hurry away. The village elder, through a translator, offers 30 loaves of bread and some dried fish for the long ship. It's insulting, but you have no negotiating power. You accept. The ship that carried 35 men to their deaths is dragged away by Scottish fishermen who will break it up for timber. You watch the dragonhead prow being torn off and thrown into a fire. It's the end of your Viking raiding career. Now you just need to somehow get home across hostile territory with no money, no weapons, and no strength. At least 3 of your group won't survive the walk. The walk through Scotland is its own nightmare. You're following trade routes, begging for food, sleeping in ditches. 2 men disappear one night. Maybe they died. Maybe they just wandered off to die alone. You don't look for them. Every step is agony on feet that have been wet for 3 weeks. The rot has reached your ankles. You can smell your own decay. Local warriors occasionally find you and debate whether to kill you or just rob you. You have nothing to steal except the rags you wear, so usually they just beat you for entertainment and move on. One young warrior takes pity and gives you directions to a monastery that might offer Christian charity. The irony of seeking help from the very people you tried to rob isn't lost on you. But shame is another luxury you can't afford. At night, you dream of home, of your mother's disappointed face when you return empty-handed, if you return at all. Your younger brother will have to attempt raiding next year because you failed. The cycle will continue. Desperate young men throwing themselves at the sea and foreign shores, most dying for nothing, a few returning with just enough to postpone starvation another year. This is the Viking Age reality, not conquest and glory, but recurring desperation and death. The monastery does offer food, but at a price, conversion. You must renounce your gods and accept Christianity. Half your group refuses and continues walking toward death. You're not religious enough to die for Thor, who certainly hasn't helped you lately. You let the monks pour water on your head and mumble Latin words. They feed you porridge and bread. It's the best meal you've had in a month. Living at the monastery shows you what you tried to destroy. These monks spend their days copying books, tending gardens, caring for the sick. They're preserving knowledge while you were trying to steal their candlesticks. One monk, Brother Thomas, speaks Norse and tells you about Mediterranean trade routes, where merchants get rich without raiding. There are other ways to survive than violence, but no one in your village knows them. After a week, the monks arrange passage on a trading vessel heading to Norway. They're eager to be rid of you, but they've kept their Christian duty. As you board the merchant ship, you realize you're returning home with less than nothing. You've lost your religion, your honor, and most of your humanity. But you're alive, which is more than 26 of your shipmates can say. The merchant ship is everything the longship wasn't: stable, dry, with actual supplies. The Norwegian merchant captain looks at you with contempt. You're evidence of the failed raiding culture that gives all Norsemen a bad reputation. He makes you work for passage, scrubbing decks, moving cargo. Your hands, already destroyed from rowing, crack and bleed anew. But it's honest work, and no one is trying to kill you. You learn that successful Norse traders make more in one journey than raiders do in 5, with far less death. They trade fur, amber, and walrus ivory for silver and silk. The captain shows you Arabic coins from Baghdad, Chinese silk from the Volga trade route. The world is vast and interconnected through trade, not war. Your village's isolation and ignorance sent you to die for scraps when wealth flows freely through peaceful exchange. As Norway's coast appears, dread replaces relief. How do you explain to your family that you're returning empty-handed? That most of your neighbors' sons are dead? That the Great Raid was a catastrophic failure? Your mother will have to choose which family members eat this winter. Your failure means someone in your household might starve. The shame is heavier than any exhaustion you felt at sea. Your village doesn't celebrate your return. As you walk up from the fjord alone, women run out looking for their sons and husbands. When they see only you, the wailing begins. You're the messenger of death, the survivor who has to explain why their loved ones aren't coming home. Some spit at you. Others just stare with empty eyes. Your survival feels like a betrayal to the dead. Your mother ages 10 years when she sees you. She doesn't ask about the raid or the plunder. She can see in your hollowed cheeks and haunted eyes that it was catastrophe. Your father says nothing, just returns to sharpening tools. Your younger brother, who thought you were going on an adventure, sees the truth in your face. Raiding is horror, not glory. But he'll probably try it anyway next year. What choice does he have? The village elder calls a meeting to discuss the failed raid. 16 families have lost their primary workers. Without the men to work farms, more families will starve this winter. Some suggest another raid immediately before the season ends. Others want to try trading. The argument is the same one Vikings have been having for generations. Risk death for possible wealth or accept poverty with dignity. There's no good answer. Winter comes early and brutal. Your family has barely enough food because you brought nothing back from the raid. You're eating one meal a day, usually thin soup made from bones and whatever roots haven't rotted. Your mother divides her portion between you and your brother. She's starving herself to keep her children alive and there's nothing you can do about it. The physical damage from the raid persists. Your feet never properly healed. You'll limp for the rest of your life. Your hands are permanently curved from gripping oars, the joints swollen with arthritis that shouldn't affect someone your age. When it rains, you feel every place your body was pushed beyond breaking. You're 17 years old with the body of a worn-out old man. At night, the dreams come. You're back on the ship, pushing the fevered man overboard. You see his face disappearing into black water. Sometimes you dream of the Saxon farmer whose knee you destroyed. Is he alive? Can he still work his land? Did his family starve because you crippled him? The sagas talk about glory in battle. They don't mention the nightmares that follow you home, the faces of people you've destroyed for no good reason. By midwinter, 3 families who lost men in the raid have starved. Their bodies are found frozen in their longhouses, huddled together for warmth that never came. The village holds a thing, a gathering to decide what to do. Some families are selling themselves into slavery for food. Others are planning to attempt winter fishing, which is nearly as deadly as raiding. Your failed expedition has destroyed the entire community's stability. You try to help where you can, but your crippled body limits you. You can't chop wood properly with your damaged hands. You can't hunt in deep snow with your ruined feet. You're another mouth to feed with minimal ability to contribute. The other raid survivors avoid you. Each reminder of shared horror. There's no brotherhood among failed Vikings, only mutual shame and survivor's guilt. Your younger brother announces he's joining a trading expedition in spring, not raiding. He's learned from your example. He'll travel the river routes into Russia, trading fur and amber. It's still dangerous, but at least he won't be stealing from monks and farmers. Your failure has taught him what 3 generations of raiders couldn't. Violence is a poor foundation for prosperity. Spring arrives with news. The monastery you raided has paid for increased defenses. Other monasteries are doing the same. The easy targets are disappearing. Future raids will face prepared defenders, making an already dangerous practice suicidal. The Viking Age isn't ending in glorious battle. It's dying from practical adaptation. Victims have learned to fight back. Your mother dies just as the snow melts. Malnutrition weakened her until a simple cold became pneumonia. She dies wheezing. Her last words telling you it wasn't your fault. But you know better. If you'd brought back even a small amount of plunder, she might have eaten enough to survive winter. You're not directly responsible, but your failure contributed to her death. Another ghost to carry. The village performs her funeral rites, but there's little to burn with the body. Wood is too precious. She's buried in a simple grave, marked with stones. No ship burial, no grave goods, just earth and rocks. This is how most Vikings really died, not in battle, but from the slow grind of poverty and malnutrition that raiding was supposed to prevent, but often worsened. Your brother leaves on his trading expedition, and you're alone with your father. He's aged terribly, barely speaking, going through motions of farm work without purpose. The farm is failing without enough hands to work it. Fields go unplanted. Animals die from neglect. The infrastructure of survival is collapsing, and you're too broken to stop it. You hear stories from other villages. More failed raids, more dead young men, more starving families. The successful Vikings you hear about in stories are becoming rarer. Most expeditions end like yours, catastrophic failure that destroys communities. The risk-to-reward ratio has shifted. Raiding is no longer desperate hope, but probable suicide. A traveling skald, a storyteller, comes through the village. He tells tales of mighty Viking victories, of heroes who won gold and glory through strength and courage. You want to scream at him that he's lying, that he's sending more young men to die for fantasies. But the village needs these stories. Without hope, even false hope, everyone would walk into the winter sea and end it. The myths are all that keeps people trying. Summer brings disease. With so many weakened by hunger, a simple stomach illness becomes an epidemic. People shit themselves to death, their bodies too weak to fight infection. The village well may be contaminated, but there's nowhere else to get water. You watch neighbors you've known your whole life die in agony, their final days spent in delirious fever. You get sick too, but somehow survive. Maybe your body, having endured the raid's horrors, has developed resilience. Or maybe you're just too stubborn to die. Either way, you recover to find a quarter of the village dead. The social fabric is completely torn. There aren't enough people to maintain basic functions. The blacksmith is dead. The boat builder is dead. Critical knowledge is disappearing with each funeral. Your father suggests abandoning the village, moving to a trading town where there might be work. But moving requires resources you don't have. You're trapped in a dying community, watching the slow collapse of everything your ancestors built. This is the real end of the Viking Age. Not dramatic battles, but quiet deterioration as communities fail to sustain themselves after losing too many young men to impossible dreams. News arrives that your brother's trading expedition was successful. He sends back a small amount of silver, not wealth, but enough to buy grain for winter. It's the first good news in over a year. Trading, not raiding, has saved your family. The irony is bitter. Everything you suffered, everyone who died, it was all unnecessary. There were always better ways. With the silver, you and your father buy enough supplies to attempt one more harvest. You work the fields despite your crippled body, every movement agony. The work is crushing, but it's honest. No one dies. No one gets pushed overboard. You're creating rather than destroying. It feels like redemption, even if it can never erase what you've done. The harvest is mediocre but sufficient. You'll survive another winter. The village might stabilize if more trading expeditions succeed. The transformation from raiding to trading culture is happening by necessity, not choice. Violence has become too expensive in human lives. Economics, not morality, is ending the Viking raids. Winter passes without starvation. It's the first winter in your life where no one in the village dies from hunger. Your brother returns in spring with more success. He's learned Russian, established trade partnerships, found sustainable income. He brings gifts, proper tools, preserved food, even some cloth. Wealth gained through intelligence and negotiation, not violence. You're now the cautionary tale parents tell children. Don't raid like Bjorn's generation, they say. Look what it cost them. You're only 18, but already historical evidence of failure. It stings, but it's true. Your suffering might prevent others. Maybe that's the only value in what you experienced. A lesson in what not to do. Your father dies peacefully in his sleep. It's a gentler death than most Vikings get. You and your brother bury him next to your mother. The farm is yours now, but you both know you'll sell it. Your brother will continue trading. You'll move to the trading town, find work that your crippled body can manage. The family's connection to this land, generations old, ends with your failure. The farm sells for barely anything, just enough to relocate. As you pack, you find your grandfather's saga, written on precious vellum. It tells of his great raids, his victories, the wealth he won. Reading it now, you recognize the lies. He probably died coughing blood like your father said, but the saga claims he died fighting 10 enemies. The mythology was always false, each generation lying to the next about glory that never existed. You burn the saga, let the lies die. Your brother protests. It's valuable family history, but you know better. It's propaganda that sent you to nearly die at sea. Future generations need truth, not myths. They need to know that raiding was desperate gambling with terrible odds, that most Vikings died poor and broken, that the sagas were recruitment tools for a meat grinder. The trip to the trading town takes 3 days. Each step away from your birthplace feels like escape. You're leaving behind the graves, the failed farm, the entire culture that almost killed you. Ahead lies uncertainty, but at least it's honest uncertainty. You know nothing about town life, but it can't be worse than what you've survived. The trading town is overwhelming. More people than you've ever seen, speaking languages you don't recognize. Arabs, Franks, Saxons, all trading peacefully. The violence that defined your world is bad for business here. Guards maintain order. Disputes are settled with silver, not axes. It's civilization, something your village never achieved. You find work at the docks, loading and unloading cargo. Your crippled body protests, but you adapt. The merchants don't care about your past, only that you show up and work. There's anonymity in the crowd. No one knows you're a failed raider. You're just another broken laborer, invisible but surviving. Your brother thrives, learning languages, making connections. Within a year, he's part owner of a trading vessel. He offers you easier work keeping his records, but you can barely read runes, let alone Latin or Arabic numerals. The world is leaving you behind. You're 18 years old and already obsolete, a relic of a dying culture that valued violence over education. Years pass in the trading town. You learn enough Arabic numbers to help with inventories. Your body, broken at 17, somehow endures. You marry a widow who doesn't ask about your past. She has her own grief. Her first husband died raiding. Together, you build something quiet and stable. Not glorious, but real. Your brother becomes genuinely wealthy through trade. He builds a house with glass windows, owns 3 ships, speaks 5 languages. Everything the raiders sought through violence, he achieved through intelligence. He never mentions it, but you both know his success highlights your failure. One brother chose wisdom, the other chose axes. The results speak for themselves. Sometimes young men arrive in town, talking about organizing raids. You want to warn them, but they wouldn't listen. They need to believe in the possibility of glory because the alternative, accepting poverty, seems worse than death. You understand? You were them once. Now you just hope they survive their education in reality. Your first child is born, a daughter. Looking at her, you make a decision. She will never know hunger that drives people to violence. You work extra shifts, save every coin, ensure she has enough. Your wife teaches her to read. Your brother pays for proper education. She'll have choices you never did. The nightmares still come, but less frequently. 20 years later, you still see the man you pushed overboard, the Saxon farmer's destroyed knee. Time hasn't erased the guilt, just made it bearable. You've never told anyone, not even your wife. Some weights you carry alone forever. News arrives. The monastery you raided has become a center of learning. Its defenses so strong no one attempts attack. They've won through adaptation while raiders keep dying at sea. Christianity is spreading through Scandinavia, partly because Christians offer trade partnerships while the old gods offer only more violence. Culture changes through economics, not conquest. Your daughter grows strong and intelligent. She speaks 3 languages by age 10, can calculate complex trades in her head. Everything you weren't, she is. When she asks about your youth, you tell her selective truths. Life was hard, choices were limited, many died young. You don't tell her about eating leather or pushing men overboard. Your brother's trading empire expands. He offers to bring your daughter into the business when she's older. She'll travel to Constantinople, Baghdad, maybe even further. The world that was closed to you is wide open to her. This is success, not gold won through violence, but opportunities created through patient work. Your body finally begins truly failing. The damage from the raid, ignored for decades, compounds. Your lungs, scarred from that winter of near starvation, can't handle exertion. Your feet, twisted from frostbite, can barely support you. You're 43 years old and dying, but you've lived longer than most raiders. That's victory enough. A new generation of skalds comes through town, telling stories of the great Viking Age. They've transformed your grandfather's generation into mythical heroes. No mention of disease, starvation, or failed raids. History is already being rewritten. The ugly truth buried under convenient fiction. You want to correct them, but no one would believe or care. Your wife finds you one day preparing to write your own saga, not for glory, but for truth. You want to document what really happened, the cost in human lives, the suffering, the pointlessness. She stops you. Who would want to read that? She asks. She's right. People need heroes, not cautionary tales. The truth would die unread while lies inspire. Your daughter announces she's partnering with Byzantine merchants. She'll be wealthier than any raider ever dreamed. She achieved through education what thousands of Vikings died failing to steal. The irony is complete. Violence was never necessary. It was just the only option for people too ignorant to see alternatives. Your brother dies suddenly. Heart failure from rich food and easy living. The same wealth that saved him ultimately killed him. There's irony in that too. At his funeral, hundreds attend. Merchants from a dozen nations pay respects. He's remembered as a pioneer of peaceful trade. No one mentions his brother, the failed raider who loads cargo at the docks. You inherit enough to stop working. For the first time since leaving home, you have leisure. It's uncomfortable. Without labor to occupy your body, your mind returns to the sea, to the ship, to the faces of the dead. Retirement means confronting ghosts you've outrun for decades. Your daughter marries a Byzantine scholar. Their children will grow up in Constantinople, educated in philosophy and mathematics. The grandchildren of a Viking raider will be civilized Romans. In 3 generations, your family has traveled from desperate violence to sophisticated culture. Evolution through education, not conquest. Age brings unexpected visitors. Other raid survivors, broken and old like you, seeking someone who understands. You sit together, not talking about glory, but about specific horrors. The taste of leather, the smell of gangrene, the weight of oars. These are the only people who truly know what happened. Everyone else believes the sagas. One survivor, Gunnar, still has nightmares about eating his benchmate who died during a storm. Another, Olaf, killed his own brother during a fight over moldy bread. These are the Viking stories that never get told. You're a support group for history's losers, bonded by shared trauma that shaped you more than any victory could. Your grandchildren visit from Constantinople. They're educated, refined, slightly disgusted by the provincial trading town. They don't understand their grandfather's crude manners, his flinching at sudden movements, his insistence on never wasting food. The gap between your world and theirs is unbridgeable. That's probably for the best. Winter fever takes many elderly in the town, including most raid survivors. You're dying too, but slowly. There's time to think, to evaluate a life that went nothing like planned. You failed at raiding, succeeded at surviving, raised a successful daughter. The scorecard is complex, not the simple glory or death binary of sagas. Your daughter reads to you from Greek philosophers, ideas about virtue, wisdom, the good life. These thinkers lived centuries ago but understood truths your culture is just discovering. Violence is primitive. Trade builds civilization. Education transcends birthright. Everything you learned through suffering, they knew through reasoning. The priest offers last rites. You converted decades ago for convenience, but now find comfort in forgiveness doctrine. The Christian God supposedly forgives all sins. That's appealing when you're carrying the weight of murder. You take the sacrament, hoping it might quiet the ghosts. It doesn't, but the ritual provides structure for dying. Your final days bring unexpected clarity. The raid wasn't exceptional, it was typical. Most Viking expeditions failed. Most raiders died young. The successful Vikings remembered by history were statistical anomalies, like lottery winners. For every Ragnar Lothbrok, hundreds of young men died anonymously at sea. You were normal. The sagas are lies. You dictate a letter to your grandchildren, telling them limited truth. Their heritage includes violence and suffering, but they've transcended it through education. Don't romanticize the past. Don't believe stories of Viking glory. Their ancestors were desperate people making terrible choices because they didn't know better. Now the family knows better. That's evolution. The last survivor from your raid, Eric, a different Eric, the first died of gangrene, visits. He's missing both legs now, amputated after frostbite turned to rot. He's carried by his grandson, begging outside the church. This is the reality of Viking survival. Crippled beggars dependent on charity. No glory, just extended suffering. Death approaches like fog rolling in from the sea. Your breathing becomes labored, each breath a conscious effort. Your daughter holds your hand. Her Byzantine husband stands respectfully aside. Your grandchildren are told you were a dock worker. That's enough truth for them. The full story would only bring shame. You think about the 26 who died on the raid. Do their families remember them? Probably not specifically. They're just names in a list of young men who never returned. The individual tragedies have blurred into statistical inevitability. Your village probably doesn't exist anymore, absorbed by trading towns or abandoned entirely. The priest performs extreme unction, oil on your forehead, prayers in Latin you don't understand. Your wife weeps quietly. She knew you carried dark secrets, but loved you anyway. That's perhaps the only real victory, finding someone who could love a broken man with blood on his hands. In your final hours, time becomes fluid. You're simultaneously dying in bed and 17 on the longship. The same fear returns, not of death, but of dying badly. Vikings were supposed to die with axes in hand, earning Valhalla. You're dying in bed, surrounded by Christians, having rejected everything your culture valued. By Viking standards, you're a complete failure. But Valhalla was always a lie, wasn't it? A recruitment tool to make young men eager for death. The real afterlife is probably nothing, just ending like sleep without dreams. That's not terrifying anymore. After a life of carrying guilt, oblivion sounds peaceful. Let the ghosts die with you. Your daughter sings a Byzantine lullaby to comfort you. It's beautiful, complex, nothing like the simple Norse songs of your youth. This is what civilization sounds like. Layers of meaning, cultural synthesis, beauty for its own sake. Your suffering helped create the conditions for her to learn this song. Maybe that's enough meaning for one life. The end comes at dawn, appropriate for someone who started their fatal journey at dawn decades ago. Your last clear thought is about that morning in your father's longhouse, receiving his notched axe. If you could tell that boy one thing, it would be, stay home. Learn to read. The glory is all lies. Your death is unremarkable. No sagas will record it. You're one of thousands of forgotten Vikings who lived through the transition from raiding to trading culture. History will remember the exceptional, the successful raiders, the great kings. It won't remember the ordinary failures who paid the price for cultural mythology. Your daughter closes your eyes. She'll give you a Christian burial with a stone marker. In a generation, no one will know you were a Viking. Your grandchildren will tell people their grandfather was a merchant. The truth will die with the last raid survivors, replaced by sanitized family history. Your funeral is small but dignified. The priest speaks of redemption, of sins forgiven, of eternal rest. It's nothing like the Viking funerals of your youth. No burning ship, no weapons, no promises of eternal battle. Just words about peace and forgiveness. Your wife places your wedding ring in your hands. Your daughter adds a small Byzantine cross. That's your grave goods. Unknown to you, 3 other raid survivors attend, standing at the back. They don't identify themselves to your family. They're here to witness the end of another witness. When all survivors are dead, the truth dies too. The sagas will become the only version of history. Your suffering will be erased, replaced by glorious fiction. Your brother's wealth ensures a proper stone marker. It reads, Bjorn Ulfsson, beloved husband and father, died in the year of our Lord 843. No mention of raiding, of the failed expedition, of the horrors survived. Just another Christian grave in a Christian cemetery. Your Viking identity is officially erased. Life continues without you. Your daughter's business thrives. Your grandchildren become scholars and merchants. Within 3 generations, your bloodline produces a Byzantine court official. The descendant of a Viking raider helps administrate Christian empire. The transformation is complete. The trading town grows into a city. The docks where you worked are expanded. Arabic numerals become standard. Latin is taught in schools. The violent, isolated culture you were born into is systematically replaced by cosmopolitan civilization. This isn't conquest, its evolution through economic necessity. Young men still occasionally speak of raiding, but it's nostalgic fantasy now. The infrastructure is gone. No one builds longships anymore. No one teaches navigation by sunstone. The skills are lost. Even if someone wanted to raid, they wouldn't know how. The Viking Age ends not with dramatic battle, but with forgotten knowledge. 50 years after your death, a scholar writes a history of the Viking Age. He interviews the last raid survivors, now ancient and often confused. Their testimonies are contradictory, horrifying, nothing like the sagas. The scholar struggles to reconcile their accounts with established mythology. In the end, he dismisses their memories as dementia, preserving the heroic narrative. Your grandson, now a Byzantine official, reads this history. He doesn't recognize his grandfather in it. The broken dock worker who flinched at sudden movements doesn't appear in these tales of mighty warriors. He considers writing a correction, but decides against it. What purpose would truth serve now? Let the dead rest with their comfortable lies. A monument is erected in your birthplace, celebrating the brave Viking raiders who brought glory to Norway. Your name isn't on it. Failed raiders don't get monuments. But 26 names are there. The men who died on your expedition, now retroactively heroes. Death has transformed failure into sacrifice, disaster into destiny. A century passes. The Vikings have become myth. Children play with wooden swords, pretending to be raiders. They don't pretend to eat leather, to push sick comrades overboard, to return home empty-handed. They pretend to win glory and gold, to die heroically in battle. The sanitized version has completely replaced reality. Your great-great-granddaughter, a respected scholar in Constantinople, writes about Northern European trade routes. She mentions Vikings as primitive precursors to civilized merchants. She doesn't know her ancestor was one of those primitives. The family history has been thoroughly sanitized. She's proud of her merchant heritage, unaware it was built on failed violence. Archaeological evidence of your village is discovered. Historians note signs of severe malnutrition, violence, and early death. They theorize about harsh conditions, but can't imagine the specific desperation that drove young men to almost certain death at sea. The physical evidence contradicts the sagas, but mythology is more powerful than archaeology. The old gods are forgotten. Churches stand where sacred groves once grew. Thor's hammer becomes decorative jewelry worn by people who've never heard thunder as divine voice. The cultural framework that created Vikings, the desperation, the fatalism, the glory-seeking, is incomprehensible to the Christianized, urbanized descendants. Your burial site is accidentally discovered during construction. The workers don't know who you were. You're just medieval remains, reburied efficiently in a mass grave. Your individual story, already forgotten, is now physically erased. You've become exactly what you always were, one of thousands of anonymous casualties of cultural transformation. Modern Norway celebrates its Viking heritage with festivals and museums. Tourists buy horned helmets, which Vikings never wore, and pose with replica swords. The violence has been commodified into entertainment. No one mentions the actual smell of gangrene, the taste of leather soup, the weight of pushing a dying man overboard. Reality doesn't sell tickets. 1,000 years pass. The Viking Age is studied by historians who debate trade routes, analyze sagas, excavate burial sites. They construct elaborate theories about warrior culture, expansion patterns, religious practices. None of them can imagine the specific weight of your borrowed axe, the particular terror of your first storm at sea, the exact temperature of the water when you pushed a man to his death. Your story, the real story, died with you. What remains is statistical probability. Most Viking raids failed, most raiders died young, most families suffered more from raiding than benefited. You were the rule, not the exception. But history prefers exceptions. So Ragnar Lothbrok is remembered while you're not even a footnote. Somewhere in Constantinople, your descendant, now so diluted the connection is meaningless, lives a comfortable life, unaware their ancestor was a failed Viking who killed for bread and died guilty. Somewhere in Norway, tourists photograph themselves at the monument to raiders who brought glory, including 26 names from your expedition who died choking on their own blood for nothing. And in this moment, in your warm bed so different from wet ship planks, you can close your eyes and be grateful you never had to live it, because now you know the truth they never taught in school. Being a Viking was never about glory. It was about young men dying badly for older men's lies, about societies destroying themselves through violence, about mistaking desperation for destiny. The Viking Age wasn't an adventure. It was a catastrophe that took centuries to recover from. Sleep well, knowing you're warm, fed and safe. Everything Bjorn never was.